Welcome to Season 2 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. On the show, we'll look at the who, what, where, why, when, and how of moving out of your education career and into a life you love. In this season, we'll meet ex-teachers who have taken their hobbies and passions from outside of education and created a new career for themselves. We'll talk to people who can support and inspire us as we make the transition and work on identifying the legacy we want to leave in the world. So come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 20. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. And on today's show, I'm very pleased to be interviewing my good friend, Amanda Croatto. Thanks for coming on the show today, Amanda.
Thanks for having me.
So Amanda, tell us, what got you into teaching in the first place?
I had actually already made a career transition. I transitioned out of nursing into a degree in textile design, which was something that I had probably wanted to do for a long time. But by the end of my textile design degree, I'd realised that there wasn't a great deal happening in Victoria and Australia, particularly in the field of textile design. So after some thought, I ended up doing a postgraduate diploma of education, which essentially qualified me to teach in the secondary system, and ended up teaching in art and design, which really was probably quite a good fit and quite a good choice for me, in that really the year that I'd probably enjoyed the most in my education was that prior to doing the degree in textiles, I had done a folio preparation course, which I found just, I think, fantastic, because I went into it feeling like I had this artist who wanted to be let out, but not having very much confidence in that, and came out of it feeling very positive and having developed a lot of skills. So in actual fact, just through serendipity and luck and being in the right place at the right time, I actually ended up teaching back in that program. And I taught there for 7 years, which had its highs and had its lows.
Okay, so what was the tipping point that made you decide to get out of teaching?
Well, I was finding teaching, the program that I was teaching in was mostly vet, and the paperwork.
Just for our international listeners.
Yeah, vocational educational training.
Yeah.
So very specifically, a stream of education that's supposed to take people into more into a practical, applied sort of occupation. So it's very applied learning. And due to complicated factors that I won't go into, the paperwork had increased exponentially in the last couple of years that I was there, to the point where you were literally either spending your entire weekend and every night at home writing, or trying to scrabble some of your time at school. And the students were actually well aware of it and would say things like, "We don't mind if you need to go and do some writing," which I found quite dismaying, that they had picked up on the fact that the course seemed to have come to regard the documenting of the course as more important than the teaching of the course. And nobody ever seemed to really care what you taught, so long as it was written down properly.
That seems to be endemic.
Yeah. And so I found that really dissatisfying. And the other side of it was probably just the politics of teaching, shall we say. Yeah. I came into teaching as a result of already having had one career. In my first year of teaching, I turned 50 and had held fairly senior management positions within nursing, and was raising kids, and was, I suppose, compared to the usual first year out teacher, I was a very confident person who didn't have any doubt about her ability to be in control or to manage things.
Yeah.
And I think some people admired that, and some people found that a bit of a threat.
Yeah.
And as a couple of years went by and I got, because teaching is really challenging. I mean, the first year or two, I was just focused on, as anyone who's taught will know, focused on, classroom management and just being prepared and how to present yourself well and, how to bring the class with you, all those sort of skills, as well as the planning of and the actual doing of it. But as I got that more under my belt and became more aware of what went on in probably the department that I was in around me, I became, it's probably about the first 5 years. I really enjoyed the teaching. Does that make sense? I really enjoyed the classroom.
Yeah.
And I really liked my students and have very fond memories of that time. But I guess, in every workplace you deal with personalities. And, there were aspects and then way people operated that. And so what happened, what really was the tipping point was that because I taught such a wide range of applied art and craft practices, like I taught everything from life drawings through to sculpture and printmaking, textiles, fashion. I taught across a really broad range, and to keep myself interested and to keep my teaching interesting, I was in the habit of doing quite a lot of workshops and developing at the same time myself as an artist. And so partly motivated by the fact that I wanted to pull back a little from this situation in the school, I applied to go down to 3 days a week. And I was told that wasn't possible. And so I came, and I didn't really see why it wasn't possible. So and plus I was basically, the principal told me that the head of my department had blocked it. When she asked him what he thought, he said that it wasn't possible for me. So I came home and spoke to my husband, who just simply said, "Oh, for goodness sake, leave."
Right.
Just like, there isn't a problem. By this stage, I was 57. And we worked out that if I actually retired from teaching and took my super, we could pay the mortgage. And he said, "If we don't have a mortgage, I don't really mind what you do." So I was very, very fortunate in that. But I resigned 2 weeks later, and in fact didn't finish working for another 2 months because, yes, I very foolishly said that I would work until I found someone to replace me, which was a bit silly. Although I did have the satisfaction of the principal stopping me in the corridor one day and saying, in her revealing fashion, "They told me you'd be really easy to replace, but I'm finding it really hard to find someone who can teach everything you teach." And I said, yes. It doesn't really surprise me, but
Yeah.
it's sort of a bit sad that you now acknowledge that at this point in time.
Isn't it? It's so telling, isn't it, that you've got no control over your career actually as a teacher, that it's all at the whim of someone else to make those decisions about who you teach and when you teach and how many days a week or whatever. And I talk to so many teachers who are in that position where they're actually really aware. And this time of year, it's November here in Australia, and it's everyone's shuffling to see what they're going to get next year, which classes they'll have. And it's a huge thing for teachers, and there's a lot of disappointment. I mean, almost every teacher I've spoken to in the last 2 weeks is disappointed with what's going to come for them the following year. And that it's just,
one thing that was happening for me was that I was also I'd been teaching in a Cert 4 in design, and Cert 4 in visual arts, which I'd really enjoyed, but I was being pushed into teaching VCE. And it's not, in terms of the creative arts, studio art, and it's not a program that I agree with. I think there's really fundamental things wrong with it in terms of preparing students to go ahead into tertiary study. And it's also a very stressful year for the students, and it's therefore a stressful year for teachers. And yeah, I didn't have my heart in it in any possible way.
And it's a different curriculum too to what you'd been.
It's a completely different curriculum. So I was teaching across two very different curriculums. Yes, so which was one of the reasons I had hoped that with going down to 3 days a week that I might sidestep the because if there are people who aspire to teach that year 11, 12 art within the school, and I felt like, you know, that there would be a better fit for that it really wasn't for me, because I didn't have as I say, didn't really have my heart in it. And it's, anyway, so I left, and I've got to frankly say that I probably spent the next 6 months recovering. I didn't realise just how battered I was by what had gone on until I sat still, and that's in fact pretty much what I did for nearly 6 months, because I didn't do very much of anything at all. But I would say, you know, and as each day went by, I felt happier. I felt happier with my decision. And like I said, I understand that I am privileged in one sense, in that I'm financially secure. But on the other hand, I worked hard for that. You know, I mean, I've worked all my life through raising my children, and so I don't make any apologies for my financial security. I think that women can have everything. I just don't think you can have everything at once. So pretty much I would see my life in stages, and most of them there's been more happiness than less, but I have to say that what I'm doing now, I have never felt happier. Sorry, I keep gazing off into the distance.
No, that's great. So tell us what you're up to now.
Okay, so part of what I had been doing in acquiring skills and things to do good briefs with my students was building on my textile background, which I trained as a weaver, but I'd actually gotten into initially basket making, and then into, well, it just so happened there was an American woman who came out to do some classes whose background also was in weaving, but she'd moved into jewellery using mostly cold connection techniques, and so none of the scary stuff like soldering or things that just seemed very foreign to me at the time. And so that's what I wanted to have more time to pursue that, and that's what I started to do. And then and actually, because I had the freedom to do things, I started doing more workshops in jewelry making and learning those techniques that used to scare the heck out of me, like soldering and saw piercing and just form, but just using metal in a way that I'd only been accustomed to using fabrics before. So that was really exciting. And the other exciting thing that happened was at the time, one of my daughters had a partner who was just beginning to work within the construction industry. He hadn't done any formal training, but was a very, very self-motivated young man, and things went pear-shaped with a job he was in, and he was trying to set himself up in a fencing business, and so we decided that we would set up a business where basically I would do all the sort of bookkeeping, and he would do all the fence building, and we would make sort of financial decisions and planning decisions together. And that's been going for, gosh, coming up for 7 years.
Oh, really? Wow, that's long.
Which is amazing, yeah, which seems incredible to me. maybe 6. 2014. Yeah, no. We've just passed the 6-year mark a little while ago. Which I remember when we started, I said to him that I was willing to commit to 3 years.
Right.
But I'd see how it was after 3 years. So we're still there. And that's provided me with a small income. I work 10 hours a week officially in that job. But the nice thing about that's because I've earned money since I was 14 years old. So despite what my husband said, and I believe he's totally sincere, I enjoy having money that I feel is specifically my own. And so when I first moved into a shared studio, I could pay my rent from my fencing business.
Right.
Which made me feel good. I know he wouldn't have grudged it, but it made me feel good. It made me feel this was something that I was doing for myself. And I now actually do pay my own rent out of my jewellery business. I'm now a contemporary jeweller. So I'm now a contemporary jeweller. I'm represented by, I think on last count, 6 different galleries. So awesome. That's taken me about 5 years to achieve that. And yeah. And I love it.
So you've obviously done some training in jewelry making, like some short courses and things like that.
Yes, I've done. I've done short courses. I thought about going back and doing because the Melbourne Polytechnic is just pretty much down the road from me in Fairfield, where they do a diploma. But I really didn't. I didn't feel, having already done a design degree, I felt like there would be lots of any of those sorts of qualifications which I'd already done before. I just didn't. I really enjoy the. I enjoy that kind of workshop where you learn a skill and then you go away and you practice it. It really suits me as a learner. And then you go, oh, okay, so now I'd like to do that. And fortunately, probably not fortunately, but fortunately for me, a lot of jewelry courses have closed down because they're expensive to run. And so there are quite a lot of people out there who used to teach who run workshops in their own studio or things like that. So I'll go and do, a 6-hour course in casting. And so I now do my own casting. I did a week-long workshop working with titanium and aluminium, and titanium's become, these are titanium, pair of my earrings. Beautiful. They've become a really big part of my output, what I produce these days. So it's sort of, and some of it's just having learnt a skill, then experimenting with it and making it my own. Sort of finding my voice with that material.
So what skills apart? I mean, obviously you came into teaching with your design, your design experience and skill, and the learning that you did in the design course, and then but you already had been a nurse and in nursing management. Are there skills that you took from teaching into your new role?
Oh, look, I think that what teaching contributed to me was it built a confidence in myself, in my own skills as an artist, really. Teaching drawing, teaching all the things I taught, really. I believe in teaching by example. So in drawing classes, for instance, I would draw. Printmaking classes, I produce prints. That pushed me to, I think to work on my art sort of inside and outside school. I think it immersed me in it. So I didn't think of it, like some of my sisters would refer to my new hobby, which made the hairs in the back of my neck stand up. But I guess I tried to be tolerant and think, well, yes, they see me as having retired and now I've got a hobby. I didn't see it as a hobby, but I might have done if I hadn't been so immersed in it, in that sort of thing of myself as a creative person. I think my time as a teacher, and I suppose probably it applies specifically to the area I was teaching in, but it was a time of a lot of growth for me, of confidence in myself as an artist, and that I had something to offer, I suppose. So I now have a studio that I have access to 7 days a week. I probably go to the studio about 4 days a week, because I'm 64 now, and we've recently come out of lockdown in Melbourne, as a lot of people know, but I just find that it is really quite nice. The pace of my life is a bit slower, and that's really enjoyable too. So I have time in my garden and some time for friends.
Yeah. And we're all looking forward to being able to do that again. So just for the audience, Amanda and I first met because our kids are about the same age, and my children brought her children home to our house one afternoon. And they just kind of were at the front door, and we invited them in, and that's how we first met. And we've been friends for I don't even know how long. 20 years?
It must be 20 years now, yeah.
And actually the folio prep course, I did that, I think the year before you did it. And then we ended up at La Trobe together studying the postgrad education course. So we've had, it's part of our paths have crossed a few times along the way. So if you wanted to advise someone who, because you've described, without naming names or being defamatory, you've managed to describe what sounds like quite a challenging workplace for you as a teacher with the political side of teaching. What advice would you give to someone who feels stuck in a situation maybe like that, or just that they feel like they've got nothing to bring, that they can't leave?
Yeah, like I said, I think that life definitely has stages, and certainly I probably, for some people, trying to get out of teaching was what for me was like getting out of nursing, because I nursed for 20 years, and by the time I left, I was a director of nursing, and I was quite highly paid, and my children were in the late years of primary school. So, I had a very sort of strong thing of that I needed to contribute to the family finances, and we had a mortgage and all those things. And I can totally understand that at that point you do feel stuck. And I won't go into what made me make that leap, but it was once again a fairly dire situation at work. But I've never regretted making that leap, let me just say. But as I said, once again, I was fortunate in that nursing lends itself to fairly lucrative part-time work. So I went from being a director of nursing to full-time study, but I actually worked every weekend. Right. So it was when I look back on that period of time, I guess you just think, well, I was young then, because I had enormous energy. I mean, I was raising kids, I was working, I was studying, committed to a really full-on course, and I think I was pretty much flying. But I don't think that that's always possible. Like I said, I think I was lucky. I had a very supportive partner about my doing that. But I think that you can approach it in small ways. And so that what I would say to people is that maybe you can't leave full-time employment and go and do a big full-time course. That's a pretty huge leap. I mean, I was 43 when I started my degree. But I think there are small steps that you can probably make. There's a huge world of part-time courses out there. And that can be very exciting. That can feel very empowering, even if you are only taking baby steps towards perhaps an eventual goal. You might not even know what your eventual goal is. And I think that that can be really hard. So that you just can give you tasters, you know, you can think, oh, why not? I'll go and do that. You know, it might be something creative. It might be something that's just a slight step sideways. I think that I think that teaching nursing are not so different in that you come from them with, you should be very confident of your organisational skills, frankly, of your employability. We tend to be very good time managers, you know, also you tend to have a personal confidence, because I think that getting up in a classroom is like acting, you know, you're on, you know, when you're trying to sell whatever it is you want the class to do that day, you're on. And I think they're really helpful skills no matter where you go. And I actually think a lot of teachers and nurses make transitions into quite you know, interesting and, you know, roles within industry and stuff, if that's something that interests you. You know, like perhaps if you're interested in admin and it's never going to where you are.
So if someone wanted to buy some of your beautiful jewelry, your titanium jewelry, where would they go looking?
Well, in Melbourne, I'm represented by Arbor Gallery it's just called Arbor in Brunswick, just off Sydney Road. The Clan Collective in High Street in Preston. Stonehouse Gallery in Warrandyte. And if you want a little drive out of Melbourne, I'm at Kyneton at the Stockroom, which is a fine art gallery at Kyneton.
And aren't you?
But I'm also in Canberra.
Canberra,
Kin Gallery. And I'm in Alice Springs, somewhere called the Leaping Lizard Gallery. So there's a few galleries out there.
And have you got it online?
And I also I don't have a website. It's something that I should have, but I haven't got to that yet. But I'm on Instagram as Amanda Croatto Jewelry. If you know how to spell my name, it'll find me, because it's a fairly unusual name.
Well, we can put the link to that in the show notes.
Yes,
and then if people are interested to have a look at your work, they can.
And that's right. They can have a look at my work, and the galleries are actually all listed by their Instagram handle. So that's a good way to find the gallery too, because usually the galleries then have a link to their online shop.
Right.
So if for anyone who doesn't live in Melbourne, Canberra or Alice Springs, apart from Alice Springs, the others are all online, so you can see the work.
Right, nice.
See it and purchase it online.
Yeah.
I always find with jewellery, it's nice to be able to touch it. But if you're remote or a long way away,
yeah.
Okay. There.
So, Amanda, you said before that you don't have any regrets. Is that true of leaving teaching as well?
Oh, and I have no regrets about leaving teaching. I thought I might. I thought I would miss my students, miss that face-to-face teaching, but it actually hasn't happened. I'm I've moved on.
So it should have happened by now if it was going to.
Well, I would have thought it would have happened, fairly early, but
okay.
Yes.
And so, what's the legacy that you want to leave in the world?
The legacy. Well, probably the legacy I'd most like to leave is to my daughters, and that is one of, I suppose, my work ethic, if you like, or it's never too late, I don't believe. And I think that part of what powered me when I left nursing was, at that point, I was in my early 40s, and I thought to myself, I've got at least 20 more years to work, and I don't want to do this anymore. And that's probably the most powerful statement I made to myself, was acknowledging that it made my heart sink to think that I had to keep doing it. And I imagine there are people, as I say, I came to teaching late, and it was, a second career for me. But I suppose I imagine people who are actually in the position that I was in nursing. So they've been teaching for 15, 20, 25 years. And you think that, well, I've had people say to me, I can't throw all that away. You never throw anything away. Everything comes with you. Everything informs where you go. It does. It informs your choices. It informs what you do. But I just think life's too short, really. It's just too short. And even now, I mean, there were 2 women in my studio who've turned 70 this year. And that really thrills me because I don't want to stop. And I'll probably have to one day. Of course, I'll have to one day. That's silly. Not probably. I will have to stop one day. I mean, the march of time is inexorable and my hands hurt sometimes, but I love what I do now. And I don't earn, as I say, I don't earn any great amounts of money, but I find it enormously thrilling when someone buys a piece of my work. Not because it's about a money exchange, because that's how we show that we value things in our society. And it's appreciation. It's like, it's a, what's the word? I can't think of the right word, but it shows I'm valued. My work is valued. And that's exciting. So what I want to leave, and perhaps, I don't know, perhaps to even friends of theirs is, and perhaps even some of my ex-students who still follow me on Instagram, that you don't have one shot at it. And look, there was deep unhappiness at times, and I think that it can be a temptation perhaps to blame that unhappiness on a relationship, and I think you're responsible ultimately only for your own happiness, And I believe that we all need to make and create in some form. And that's the way. That's where happiness lies.
Now I've got one final question for you, just for a bit of fun at the end. Is there a favourite song that you have, or a song that has really deep meaning for you?
Well, yes. Actually, I really struggled with this when I looked at that question, because I thought, I like lots of songs. And so I actually said to George, my husband, I said, what's my favourite song? Just joking. And he said, it'd have to be something by Joan Armatrading. He said, how about Me, Myself, I? And I said, you're right. I don't know if you know that song, but it's very much an anthem of it's a bit I am woman, it's I'm strong. At one point the lyrics I think say, I want a girlfriend, but only for Saturdays, 6 days to be alone. Which I just read as, I've got so much to do, I need 6 days to get on with it, but I like to have a day, to catch up with friends.
Nice.
Yeah, and I thought, gosh, you're also right. That is a song that I would say resonated for me, because I feel like that sometimes. Sometimes I just feel like, I've got to get going, so much to do, so little time to do it.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks so much, Amanda. Thanks for coming on the show today.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises, with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Do you know someone else who could benefit from hearing more stories of hope and transition from teachers all around the world? Please take a moment to share this and other episodes via your podcast app. Each share helps me reach listeners just like you who can benefit from this content. The Get Out of Teaching podcast is proud to be part of the Experts on Air podcast network. For show notes and other resources, please visit larksong.com.au/podcast.